Welcome back to 209 Prep Sports. Today it will be the second recording we had. We didn't want to kind of hijack the podcast that we had with Mia Bryant, because we think it's important that the reason we're doing this is to highlight, athletes or the prep athletes in the area. So we really didn't want to get into the current situation, the current status of things, and kind of muddy the waters with Mia's interview. Mia did a great job, obviously. But Scott and I, have both had our experiences over the holidays with COVID. Me personally, I had it. I got it on the 11th. I had it for about 18 days. Pretty sick, in the middle of it. And still dealing with some of the repercussions of it. Personally, I think I had it as, without... not as bad as some people, because I didn't make it. I mean, I made it. Other people have not, but it was pretty bad, and it was scary. And I think all the negativity in the media and the press made it probably much worse. But me personally, I still believe that our kids are being shortchanged. I still believe that we should be playing sports and finding a way for our kids to play sports and keep them active and things like that. Now, and it's a personal opinion, but I know that you also have had yours.
Yeah, so I experienced it as well, contracted the virus. I don't know exactly what day I got it, but tested positive on the 18th of December. My symptoms were, or I shouldn't say my symptoms, but the way it affected me was not quite as severe as it affected you. So what I had was probably a milder case. Initially, it just felt like I had a headache all the time, felt like I had a really bad head cold, and it just zapped the energy out of me. Know this, we're not saying COVID is not real. It is absolutely 100% real. It's extremely dangerous. You need to take all the precautions that everybody says you need to take, and we need to do everything we can to prevent people from getting this, take all the preventative measures we can, because it does affect people differently. And it can be extremely severe in some cases. So by no means are we downplaying this virus at all. But just like Chris said, even after having this, I still think that we've done a disservice to our youth, and at least in the fact of not allowing them to make decisions on their own on whether they, feel it's safe, or their parents or whoever feel it's safe, and move forward that way, because we have models throughout the United States that have been moving forward with sports. I mean, look at the biggest model we have. On Monday night, we're going to have two teams playing for the national championship in football. They both played full footballs. Well, maybe not Ohio State. They played a limited season, but they were able to navigate COVID, and there's no reason why we couldn't have done that here in California, because we've got other state models that have proven that. I have friends in other states whose kids get on the bus in the morning and go to school, sit through school, get on the bus in the afternoon, and come home. And other friends who have high school age students who have competed in a full football season and now are competing in basketball and wrestling and the other winter sports. And so, it's kind of frustrating being here in California. I just wish that we would have done a better job of at least, if anything, giving the opportunity for people to make that decision.
Yeah, I wholeheartely agree, and again, to reiterate what you said, I don't think that either of us ever felt like COVID wasn't real. And I was never an anti-masker or any of that stuff. And I think, as adults, you should have the right to do and live your life the way you choose, especially, we are in the state of California, but we are a part of the United States of America, and the freedom that we should be afforded to do the things that we need to do, or we feel that we need to do for our right to pursue happiness, And so, I was pretty sick, but I think at the end of the day, one of the things that always resonated in my mind was, how this affects how it's the kind of the trickle down to the kids. So and that really hasn't changed for either of us. I mean, and it's been a lot more serious than we'll allude to. I mean, both of us have dealt with other things, beyond our personal bouts with it, but so at this point, there are things that, like Scott said, there are models that we could follow. And I think the problem that I have, so there towards early December, the CIF, paused everything and released. They finally came out with the guidelines that everybody was kind of sitting around waiting for. Why it took, the better part of 8 months to come up with something that they came up with baffles me. And I think what's more sickening than anything is that we were in the tiers that they're now requiring us to get back to already. We were in those tiers in the fall.
Right.
I mean, and so had there been a better preparation from the state, to the CIF, to the districts and the school and the individual schools, there's no reason that we couldn't have got, our fall sports in. Now we're going to be held to we're going to kind of revert back and say, oh, if we get back there, now you can play, and that's where the frustration comes in, and it's, so basically there are 4 tiers. So the current tier that all of us are in is purple. Well, all of us outside of 4 individual counties, but purple is and that's going to allow cross country, golf, skiing, snowboarding, swimming and diving, tennis and track and field. So those sports will happen no matter what things are at. I mean, those have already been approved. No sports can happen until January 25th. But after that, things will start to open up. And I think the CIF has even released schedules for those particular sports. When you get into substantial, which is red, the second tier that we're in, that allows baseball, field hockey, girls lacrosse, and softball, which I think most of us are pretty confident that we'll get there at some point in the spring. And then moderate is orange, which the San Joaquin County was in orange prior to Halloween for about 3 months. And that's badminton, football, gymnastics, boys lacrosse, soccer, volleyball, and water polo. And then the one tier that we have not been in since we've been in COVID, under the COVID requirement or restrictions, is minimal, which I think that's yellow, but that's those sports that are going to be basketball, competitive cheer, and wrestling.
As I sit here and listen to you break down the different sports and what tier we need to be at, I can't help but think, where is the scientific side of things when it comes to this? Because I understand, say maybe not even cross country, because anybody that knows anything about cross country knows that that's a competitive sport, and sometimes at the beginning or at the end, there's some contact made, and so that's not a true contactless sport. My problem is how do you differentiate between the different sports and what levels you have to be at in order to compete in these sports? And I think a perfect example that shows to a certain degree what I'm talking about is I recently saw somebody post something on Facebook where it showed it was one of the playoff games, and they had the coin toss before the playoff game, and I'm talking about the NCAA Division I National Championship playoff, and they only allowed one captain from each team to go out for the coin toss because of COVID restrictions. But then basically just a couple of minutes later, you have 22 guys knocking the crap out of each other on the field, tackling each other, pulling each other down. Is there some type of scientific proof that shows that the coin toss is that dangerous of an activity that you can only have one person out there for the coin toss? And then, obviously I'm being sarcastic. My problem is that, I know that there's been studies on contracting, say, the flu or the cold or whatever, and airborne pathogens are, they now have some pretty good information on how these things are getting passed. So, to me, again, is it different? My question then to the CIF and the powers that be in the state of California, is COVID contracted differently in the state of California than it is in some of these other states?
Yeah, I mean, and kind of alluding to your, the coin flip situation, I think there's so much so much happening now that's about optical, so they want it to our optics, they want it to look a certain type of way, and you see that, like you just mentioned, so the football players in the NFL or the NCAA are playing, tackling each other, and then they go to the sidelines and put a mask on, and these are all people that are being tested, and the transmissions that are happening from the outside in. And that's what, and I think that most people would agree, and we're not going to, you and I are not here to play Twitter scientist or anything like that, or talk about what's real and not real.
Well, I do have to input here. I did not get my Facebook doctorate like a lot of other people I know of
and you
have achieved.
And you didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express.
I did not stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. But if you do want to get expert information, just open up your Facebook account and look at some of the posts on there. It's ridiculous.
And so you go through this, and I think that, you and I, the contention that you and I both had this entire time is that we're being held to a different standard than other states. And I get it. And I understand that, we're a liberal state in general, and we're driven and politically, we're guided by, a very democratic party, that leans towards, things that we're in a point in our society, I think, where we have a lot of separation. I think there's a lot of division because you have very liberal thoughts, and then you have very conservative thoughts. And I think that we're a state that kind of tries to mix that and doesn't do a very good job doing it. It's almost like oil and water.
Yeah.
And so I think that where things have landed, and I think in all of us, and especially in the listening public and in general, I think all of us are just frustrated that, you have a governor that, shuts down regular businesses and keeps his own winery open. You have a governor that shuts down youth sports and then sends his kids out of state, to go play sports somewhere else because they're decent soccer players. You have a governor that shut down schools and then sent his kids out of state to go to another school. And so I think the problem that most of us have is that if it's in it, and I shouldn't have said if it's not dangerous. It's dangerous. But if it's so dangerous that you have a governor that's privy to information that most of us are not privy to. I mean, we are getting second, third, fourth, fifth hand knowledge of this, but you're having a guy that's sitting with the CDC and sitting with the WHO and sitting with these departments that know everything that's to be known.
Yeah, and not all of us are in the same financial tier that he's in that would allow us to send our kids to other states to go to school or participate like that or do some of the things that he's done. And the purpose of today is not to beat him up. Everybody has their own opinions and that's great. Again, circling back to that, our whole argument is doing what's best for our student athletes. And along with that, I think you should also consider the other co-curricular activities that these kids are missing out on, whether it be band, marching band, jazz band, the performing arts. There's a lot of, we have a tremendous performing arts studio here in Linden, and it's laying empty because of COVID. And could we put on, or could they at least go in there and practice their craft? Yeah, absolutely they could, but because of the way that we've done things, they're not allowed to. And so, I think we spent some time in the past talking about mental health and the issues there. When we talk about things like, the reason why we have these rules in place, terminology such as risk management is thrown out there. And I don't think people really truly understand the essence of true risk management. True risk management is doing the right thing the right way all the time. That is, in essence, that's true risk management. So using that definition, which I believe is the best one out there, then we're doing this the wrong way. And we're not doing it the right way. We're doing it the wrong way, and definitely not doing it all the time. There's a better way to do this. And the effects of COVID are terrible, but what are the effects what's the mental damage that we're doing to our students.
And we don't, and I don't even know that we're going to ever know. I mean, I think it's going to be years before that filters itself out, much like there's a lot of talk about what the long-term ramifications of getting COVID are and things like that.
Sure.
So we don't know, and I don't think that we're in a position to, I think that you and I have always been on the side that, this is what we're supposed, you live your life, and, I've got into some arguments on Twitter with people because, I mentioned that I had it, and the guy, and I wore, up to the time I had it, I was wearing a mask, and I wash my hands regularly and all that stuff. And the guy goes, well, luckily you wore your mask or you might've died. And I'm like, I got COVID. And he goes, well, there's a loading phase. And I'm like, I'm not going to get into the science of this, but you don't know what I do in my life. Well, and I promise you, I wasn't sitting by anybody that had COVID for any length of time.
I'm going to throw this out there too. I don't engage in arguments about COVID because I'm not that smart. I'm not. I know it exists. I know it's dangerous. I'm not going to get in an argument about it because I don't study it. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. But I will say this, the CDC did come out with a study that said that 70% of the people and I don't know what the date was, we're probably 2 months ago is when I read this, but it came out and said 72% of the people who contracted COVID were wearing a mask.
Yeah.
Okay. And to me, I'm going to avoid going any deeper than that. I have an opinion about that, but you're gonna get it. I mean, if you don't take precautions of staying 6 feet away and staying out of, certain areas, what they're saying, you're gonna get it. If you're willing to take that risk, that's part of being a free American, a free citizen, and we shouldn't be, held hostage because one person in Sacramento believes that we shouldn't be doing things. And I'll leave it at that.
So let's kind of get back into kind of where things stand now. So obviously everything's on hold. There's a CIF meeting today. I think there are three CIF meetings planned over the next few weeks as we approach January 25th. Nothing can happen until January 25th. At that point, there will be a decision made whether they push that back to, say, I don't know, February 13th or something. We don't know the specifics on that. But I will tell you that I do know that Washington State is going to start football in February. So Washington, Oregon, Nevada, that's California, awesome. A bunch of the Western states decided not to play. Washington's the first state that said we're playing. We're awesome. So their schedule's intact and in place, and and I don't know what it's tied to in particular. I don't know if it's a tiered system or what's going to stop it. And I think that, we've had some conversations about things, and there's been some feedback and pushback on stuff that we mentioned that we thought, you and I both, that football would become a club sport at some point. Mm-hmm. And we're starting to see that. I
hope so. I think it would be good for the sport.
Yeah. And I think that there's 20, I think I counted 20 teams in California that have started, are now and this is full contact, 40 something guys per team. They're traveling to Arizona, I think to Bullhead and a couple other places, and playing 4 or 5 day tournaments, which is got to be a little bit
for football. That's pretty brutal.
Yeah. It's got to be a little bit hard on them. I don't know if you get four or 5 games, or if you get 2 or 3 games in a 4 or 5 day period.
Yeah.
And the travel, and that's going to be, and I think that's where there's going to be, the hiccups with travel sports in general, having to go to another state, especially football, because that's a week, you're going to have to go once a week, and that's not cheap, and so it becomes really relatively expensive.
But, maybe, as things, they allow fields to be used again and things open up like that, maybe we can learn from that and have things in California. Because I stand by what I said several weeks ago about, I do think we are gravitating towards an all club athletic system. We're seeing that now. And there are people, I've actually had the conversation with people recently about, do sports even belong in the schools anymore? And that's a very valid argument. Do sports belong in the schools? It would be, financially, it would lift the burden there. It would, there's so many things that I think both positively and negatively that could be discussed about taking sports out of schools. And to be quite honest with you, I don't have a hard feeling either way, but I can see the benefit of not having sports in schools.
Oh, for sure. I think it would free those schools, those programs up, to do things a little bit differently. I think the biggest problem probably comes at the kind of like we just had a conversation with your daughter about how you manage both, how you manage the the schooling, because when the sport is attached to a school, I think you have a lot more flexibility, and working with teachers and things like that. When you're working with a club, sometimes our teachers a little bit more standoffish, and there'll be an issue there. But and there's an evolution with everything. There's always going to have hiccups when you first get started with something. But I think, like you and I talked about, I could totally see schools are those academies like IMG, and the like. There's a lot of them out there. A lot of preparatory schools, that are highly focused on athletics and provide an education with a lot of proctored tests and tutor, traveling tutors and things like that. So
I agree. I think some of the what I think being in California, what people might consider more obscure. When you go to the East Coast, they're not so much. But I'll use them. Like ice hockey, for example. Ice hockey is growing by leaps and bounds in the state of California. But when you go back east, most ice hockey players that are very good or have the potential to be good, or that are going to be moving on to the next level, they don't go to high school at their local high school. They go to an academy, they go to a boarding school, and then when on the boys' side, when they become juniors, they go out and they're part of a junior program before they go on to college. So it's being done already in some sports, widespread. Like that's the only way you're going to get, if you're a male athlete, you're going to have to go that route for ice hockey, because that's 90% of the college players went that route. So that's gives you your best shot. So at the end of the day, and I know we're going to be wrapping this up here pretty quick, but at the end of the day, I truly stand behind what I said. I think that we are gravitating towards an all club athletic kind of landscape for high school age students.
Yeah, and I've been not preoccupied here, but I wanted to find. There was a tweet yesterday. So there's this coach Nguyen, Jimmy Nguyen. I'm not sure where he coaches out of, but he was able to track down some information. So high school football happened in Pennsylvania, and I apologize if we spend a lot of time on football, but I think that football is really what's held back a lot of the sports, and created this this halt to athletics in general.
Well, it's the one sport that if I'm a basketball player, or like my daughter, track and field, or baseball or softball, or these sports, you can go other states and go participate in. Football, not so much.
Yeah.
It's you can't. So football is the one that has probably been negatively affected more than any other sport.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
And I think both of us are aware, that football, whether you have a good football team or a bad football team, the economics of football help the other sports, because that money is used across the other sports because they don't generate as much income. But Coach Nguyen went to I think it's the PIAA, so it's kind of like RCIF, but in Pennsylvania. So high school football this season was played in Pennsylvania. There were 3,424 games scheduled. 3,226 games were actually played. So 198 games were not played. 97 of those were canceled by school districts, and 101 of them they were canceled due to it was being cautionary. It wasn't due to any outbreaks or anything like that. The PIAA, with 0 reported cases of team-to-team transmission in every single fall sport in Pennsylvania. So and again, not that it's not real, but if things are done properly, it's like right now I have 4 boys in my house and 2 of them are sick. They've been COVID tested, but they're just sick. I would not send them to practice. I wouldn't send them to practice.
Of course.
Pre-COVID, much less post-COVID. So if we do the right thing, and everybody, and we'd have to be probably a little bit more sensitive to that, making sure that, if a kid does have the sniffles or something, that we have to be a little bit more cautious, and that, because that protects the other athletes, and and the other schools and their classmates and things like that.
Mhm.
We're not trying to take anything away from anybody else. We're just trying to give these kids opportunity, you know, give them hope. You know, we're 2 months away from a year that we're going to be under this.
That's right. Yeah. And, you know, you bring up a great example because I believe PIA is the Pennsylvania Interscholastic Athletic Association.
Probably,
and I will tell you this firsthand. I've been to their state football championships at Heinz Field. And you talk about excitement. That's football in Pennsylvania is exciting enough as it is. You go to state championship. But I think my point is that you have these people that are in this association that are so passionate about it. They were like, yes, we will follow every rule, every guideline you give us. And if you let us move forward, we'll do it.
Yeah.
And we weren't even given that opportunity.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, here, you know, like you said, how many point to point transfer of COVID occurred in those games?
Zero.
There's zero recorded cases because they're so passionate about playing their games. They're going to do whatever they're told to do. I guarantee you the coaches here in California would be the same way.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate. And so, you know, as we wind down today, you know, we wanted to keep things separate, but we definitely needed to address where we were at situationally, you know, with Scott and I personally, why we took a few weeks off. You know, here's what my true belief is. We will play spring sports. There will be no doubt in my mind that baseball, softball, track, golf, swimming, those spring-ish sports, soccer maybe even, will actually happen. Football, we have a very tight window. So we basically have about a month. But now I've heard a couple of different things. So we obviously have the travel programs that are out there. There are also high schools that will probably, if the CIF decides to cancel their seasons, there will be high schools that decide to play outside the CIF sanction, which if the CIF cancels it won't change anything. So some schools, I believe, will have a season either way. But I do think that there's a really good chance that we could get in as of right now. So as things stand, they've eliminated all of playoffs and all of preseason games. So basically, whatever your league schedule would be your games right now. So the 5 or 6 league games that you would have, and then potentially one bowl game at the end. So it'd be a 6 to 7 game season. And I think with the last potential start date being the 3rd week of February, which would have everything done early to mid-April, which was what the pre-existing schedule was. So football and volleyball and those sports are not dead in the water. Now, are they in trouble? They are. And I think that all of us are familiar with that. And I also know firsthand that the CIF is working with the state of California to try to get these sports put into a different tier, because they don't, much like, you know, the Pennsylvania study that was done, you know, they know that the transmission rates student to student aren't as drastic as they are. Mm-hmm. And most of the kids that are contracting, you know, I think most of the people that are getting it, not that they can't transmit it to each other, but most of it's coming adult to student, you know, and it's coming from the outside. And we're even seeing it at the professional level. I mean, I know the Cleveland Browns are dealing with some stuff this week prior to theirs, but that's usually somebody didn't do what they were supposed to do and they expose other people.
Because I can tell you, I have a daughter that plays Division I sports, she plays Division I ice hockey, and they're getting to play because they're following the rules. They're getting tested every single day. Yeah. They're kind of bubbled away from everybody else, and they're getting to play. But I will say this, kind of on a anecdotal point. They play ice hockey and they're beating the crap out of each other the whole game. They're going back and forth. And at the end of the game, they have to line up on blue lines, and they are not allowed to shake hands. They just got to like wave their sticks at each other and skate off the ice. So
again, optics. It's just
need to make it look a certain type of way. My point, I guess, in that is it can be done. You know, hockey's a contact sport. It can be done. We just have to be smart about it. We have, you know, and I hope we get to do it, because I know that there's a lot of kids. I drive by, you know, we go to schools and I see all these kids they can't have coaches and this and that, and they're out there practicing, and God bless them, because, you know, they're good kids. And again, I know we're a sports show, and I'm just going to say this again. I think we're doing a disservice to every other kid out there too that does co-curricular stuff, whether it's, like I said, performing arts, band, technical stuff, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's, I just hope it changes soon.
Well, and as we wrap this up, it's we are here for the kids, and I think that the majority of people are probably pretty unhappy with the way things have gone. We all have a say. I mean, we really, the next election, even right now, there's a huge recall going on if you don't believe that you're being represented properly and things like that, and I would encourage, if we have seen nothing else in this last 10 months plus, we've seen how politics drive our society and positively and negatively. But our kids, are resilient, and they're strong and they can rebound from a lot, but at some point we have to get back to some normalcy. There has to be something. And I think the reality of it is for these kids is if they had sports that they would be much more, I think they're probably more laissez-faire and carefree about how they think about things right now because they don't have anything to worry about or lose.
They're kids.
And
they're kids.
What are you going to lose if you go? And most of them are like, if I get it, if I get it, I get it. Like what we've mentioned, my daughter's up at playing softball, and 2 girls contracted it through the family members, and they were in quarantine and all that. And they don't even have to test for 90 days, but all the other ones have to test biweekly, if not even more than that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, not that there's a positive out of it, but I mean, I'd rather not have to test twice a week if I didn't have to. So, but as we get updates, next week we'll be back on, with any updates that we might have. Maybe we'll look for another interview. If anybody out there knows of anybody who's recently signed that would have, that would call in or come into the studio and do an interview, we'd love to. We like to share the successes of everybody in the community as much as possible. It becomes somewhat difficult because we're covering a very broad area. So we don't want to, but we don't want to shortchange anybody. But at the same time, it's really hard for us to locate every single person that's signed. Mm-hmm. So if we don't recognize you, somebody's got to let us know. I mean, we're a grassroots effort with we don't even have a caviar budget. I think we're like on a tuna fish budget and just trying to figure out how to get our way through this.
Yeah. And I'd love to hear from some coaches too, whether, you want to be on the show or if you want to respond to the social media, just give us your thoughts, and you can, if you don't want us to use your name, that's fine. But I really, people have to be getting sick of, if they like our show, they may be getting sick of what we're having to say. Would really like to hear from some of these other coaches and get their perspective. Yeah,
both of us are super excited once we get back to competition that we can actually cover the sports that we want to cover and be able to highlight the kids and the experiences that they're having. So we'll be back next week. But on our way out the door, remember, you can always reach us on Twitter at 209prep. You can reach us on Facebook at 209prep sports. And you can always email us at prepsports209@yahoo.com. Again, prepsports209@yahoo.com. We'll share this. We'll share I'll keep posting this information on social media. We're in the process of working on a web page that we'll be able to share some things and hopefully run a banner with the kids that have signed and things like that. So we have a central location for people to go to and share with their families and things like that. So thank you very much and have a great
day. Stay safe, everybody.